All right, thanks for staying with Citizen TV. Let's start that discussion right now. We'd like to hear your views on every single subtopic that we're going to talk about. Send an SMS, send us your name and where you're texting from on 22422 or online at Trevor Mbija at Citizen TV Kenya. Use the hashtag tonight. Let me introduce my guests real quick, starting from my immediate right, Archbishop Jackson Ole Sapit. Thank you so much for making time.
Thank you, Trevor. And
Sheikh Ibrahim Letome from SUPKEM. Thank you so much for making time.
Thank you, Trevor.
And Reverend Joseph Mutie, the Chairperson Interreligious Council of Kenya. Thank you so much for making time.
Thank you, Trevor.
And Reverend Callisto Odede, Presiding Bishop Sitam. Thank you very much for making time as well.
Thank you, thank you.
So, Archbishop, I'll start with you on this. Just yesterday, you called what the government is calling the finance bill irresponsible taxation of Kenyans. But today, the president himself talked about one aspect of it mostly, the housing levy. And he said this is a mortgage for hustlers. It is not a tax, it is your own money, and it is a saving. Do you agree with the president's sentiments?
I will not want to say that we have expertise in differentiating taxation and levy as to, how do we look at it. But the whole thing, for me, as a layperson, in this field, is that any deductions on anybody's salary amount to less, take home. And from where I come from and where I sit, with the kind of high cost of living, and even yesterday when we had the House of Bishops, and we had a moment of reflecting, on all these levies. You are now talking about the fuel, tax that is also being proposed. We all know that we have VAT, we have pay-as-you-earn. When you put the lump of the tax regime together and all the deductions, that's why we are saying, the burden to that common person is going to be heavy. And when it is heavy on that person, it affects what? The purchasing power. So that, I have need for fuel, cooking gas. I'm talking about the person not with the car. Cooking gas, I have need for rent, I have need for electricity, I have need for food, I have need for school fees. When you put all that together and look at the household budget against what is deducted from the source, that's why we are saying, we need to grow an economy that can be able to sustain and enable me to have the purchasing power so that when the deductions happen, then I am able to comfortably meet the very basic needs. And from where I sit from, we are looking at the basic need of that person whom we are calling, the lower cadre in earnings. So if all these, levies, let us even not call them taxation, all these levies are added to the deductions of that, what they take home, then you definitely affect the purchasing power. And that, is coupled with the cost of bread, the cost of, unga, the cost of cooking oil. When everything else is high, then that purchasing power of that household becomes problematic. And that's why we are saying, intentions can be very good, but let us look at the times. And I think the times are not right for us to add more and more levies to this person who is almost unable to buy what they need to buy.
Yeah, Archbishop, the time may not be right, but we started going down this slippery slope a long time ago. Where were you all this time? It's only now that your voices are being heard.
We have all been in Kenya. So none of us has been absent. We have all been in Kenya. And yes, it has been with us always. But, what wakes us up is more addition and another addition and another addition. And then we are asking, when you ask the family budgeting processes, when you're doing a family budget, and, you're going to the supermarket and you're making a shop list. My little granddaughter yesterday was teaching us what they learned in class, that when you go have a shopping list to go to, the supermarket, first you think. Then you ask yourself, what is the most important thing that you're going to buy, which is critical to you as a family, to you as a person? And that is what sinks in the mind. That now when you begin to add what you have and what you need, and you do your calculation. Now, this is where the purchasing power now come into play.
Okay.
Now, when these levies are too many, that eats into what is deducted at the source, from before you even put it, you bring it home, then your purchasing power on the shopping list continue to go higher and higher because you have not been able to reduce those other commodities to a manageable level.
All right. Sheikh, what is your view on the proposed taxes in the finance bill?
Thank you, Trevor. You see, the intention might be very good, but again, the timing. We've just come from an election where the government in power rode on the promise of telling the people that you are going to bring down the cost of living. It's hardly 6 months down the line. They come up with all these proposals, which might look very good academically for a person who is an economist sitting down and explaining all those things. They look very good. But let us look at the net effect on the Kenyans who had hopes that as soon as this new government comes into place, of course, let us be realistic, Trevor. Nothing can be done overnight. The government needs time. But again, we need to be realistic and also have our priorities right. Is it right now to keep on overburdening the Kenyans? Is it the right time to do that? And again, as you said here, the president came up and gave that explanation. You see, sometimes information is empowering. Why do we need to rush now? And I could even ask you the same question you're asking the Archbishop, where were you before? It doesn't matter when you decide to speak. When you feel things are wrong, for me, it doesn't matter when that timing is. Because you can even ask, those people who are bringing these proposals now, they were in government. These are not new people in government, holding very senior positions. Where were they before? Why are they bringing them now? So the same question you're asking the religious leaders, I can pose that to the politicians. Where were they before? So for us, we feel now it's time for us to speak. Where is it going to stop? And we feel it has to stop now. We need to sit down and see what is the net effect of these proposals to the Kenyan who was hoping that the burden will be reduced on them, but now it's even becoming heavier. So the ideas, the proposals could be very good, but the timing is wrong, and Kenyans need to be involved more. It has to be a very participatory process, and let the views of everybody be brought on board. Let us think about that Kenyan down there who is going to be affected very adversely by some of these proposals.
Yeah. Father Mutia, what are some of the recommendations you're going to make, if any, on the finance bill?
Well, thank you, Trevor. I think for now, just as you've heard from my colleagues, and I echo their sentiments fully, I think the best option is to first shelve this bill and let's think through. Let's take our time. Let's not rush. Because as Sheikh has just said, we are coming out of a kind of crisis. We are not yet, we had, a famine and drought in the country. The rains have just, come in the other day. We have nothing, in the field for, from the farms that people can utilize. So let's first take our time and see what is the best time to come up with such suggestions. Because it's true, we are a country that is in crisis. We know there are debts. We know there are so many things that are, challenging us. But I pray that my way of thinking would be, let's take time, because time will give us a moment to relieve ourselves from the crisis that we find ourselves in.
But that time then means the status quo remains because the government has to do its budget.
Well, things have been running, and when you say the government has been running also, and we are also talking about, we are seeing, where is accountability, we are seeing many things are happening. And when you are bringing this up, we see government is also spending. What is the priority for the government? Is the priority the taxation, or how do we balance between what we spend and what we receive? That is where we have a challenge. We want to see or to request if there could be some kind of cushioning, kind of taking care, because we don't need to spend so much now. we need to see how we cut some of our spending so that we can look into our priorities.
Okay.
Yeah.
Reverend Odede, what is your view on the finance bill as it is right now?
Thank you very much, Trevor. Yeah. I think I'd look at it at different, slightly different angle. The first is the situation in which the government finds itself in. Yeah. We do seem to have an international economic recession that's affecting the whole world. You go to the UK, the rate inflation has gone up to almost 11% compared to Kenya, which is 9 point something. So it's a global recession. In the USA, banks are closing and the like. Now, in the midst of this global recession, it has also hit Kenya. Secondly, I would look at it from the question of what can the government avoid doing and what can they not avoid doing. There are things that they find themselves in. For example, we already have debts which we are servicing and they are due, you have to pay those debts. Although some of them were part of the governments that brought in the debt so that they would not blame the debts on others, but we already have the debts that we are servicing. But on top of that, if you don't have enough income in any household, the best thing you do, you reduce your expenditure. You don't go ahead and hire 50 CAS when you can do with 25. So there are a number of things that actually the government can do that would reduce the level of expenditure. I think another thing that I would mention also, countries where we have a high taxation like that, for example, Scandinavian countries, very, very high taxation. You don't pay school fees. You don't look for your own health arrangements, get another insurance to take care of your health, because all those are covered by your taxation. But here, if you have heavy taxation, I think I heard some people saying it's 52% because you are taxed, the money you are taxed, again, double, triple taxing. Where you have that kind of taxation, there's usually facilities that are provided, infrastructure is provided, personal facilities, education, fees, all those are provided. But if you are taxed and you still have to pay that as parents, I think there is something wrong. So the government, I think, has to reflect on that. If we are going to tax our people so heavily, what are we providing that will show that actually we are taking their money away? Okay. Otherwise, I do think it is a very, very high taxation.
All right. Let me bring up some of the proposals in the finance bill so that we touch on some of them. First one that I want to bring up on the screen is one that the president spoke about today, which is 3% of the housing levy to be paid by an employer and another 3% by an employee. Archbishop, let's talk about them one by one. Is this a fair proposal in your assessment? In as much as you mentioned that it's not an economics class, but from your perspective, from a layman's perspective, is this a bad idea, considering this country has a deficit of 250,000 homes every year? So it's 80% that is always missed, according to Kenya National Bureau of Statistics.
In my honest view, the proposal at face value is a good proposal because we all need homes. The question is now the question of priority. And what we are saying here is, what is the most critical priority? Because, economists tell us economists exist to manage scarcity. And that's why the importance of, being an economist, to manage scarcity. Now, we are in that situation of scarcity. We came from COVID-19. We had a drought. Then we have the inflation, the high cost of living because of the prices of hunger. Thank God for the rains, because the rains have now given us hope. The fuel prices have not come down. Inflation is being driven by two major factors, the cost of fuel and food. So if we are able to level that, then bringing, the levy of housing will not be a problem because we all need housing. So for me, the thing is, what is the priority now? And the priority now to many of our households is how to feed themselves, how to clothe themselves, how to take their children to school, they are worried about their healthcare. So to me, it is a matter of priority, not judging whether it's a critical thing. It is a critical thing. It's a beautiful idea, but the priority and the timing is what I can still say we needed to have pushed until the economy is able to accommodate that.
Okay. Sheikh? on this housing levy?
Yeah, I just want to add my voice to what the Archbishop has said.
Yeah.
It's a very good idea because we need housing for our people. But again, the timing, as he said, and then what the Bishop said here, are there other areas that maybe we could even show the citizens of this country that even we people up there, we are taking these measures to make sure that we cushion the people. Like what is mentioned here, the number of people who are hired, are they necessary? The number of trips that our politicians and other people make out there in the name of benchmarking and the rest. Why can't the Kenyans see also that even at the top, we are beginning by reducing expenditure at the top. He has just given the example of the 50 cabinet assistants, chief administrative officers. Did we need them at a time when the economy is suffering, at a time when everybody is crying that we have that big debt there? And you see, Kenyans are watching, so we see a contradiction. Here we are saying the economy is not good, but we can see ourselves, we continue hiring people that we don't need. Some of these offices, actually, we don't need. And Kenyans cried, but their cries were ignored. They were ignored, and they went ahead and they were sworn in, and they are in offices. So this contradiction also makes the whole idea look like, is there any sincerity? Is somebody thinking about that Kenyan down there? So the idea, Trevor, beautiful idea, timing wrong. There are other areas that we could begin with to show the good faith and the goodwill that we want to begin from there. We want to reduce the expenditure. Yeah. We want to stop seeing these long fleets of cars, just one person, a governor, and you might think it's the president passing, or a minister, and you might think maybe it's a president that is passing. There are so many other areas that we can begin with to show the goodwill that actually we are very sincere about this and we are caring about the Kenyans. Even the salaries of our MPs, they are among the most highly paid MPs in the world. Can't we also begin from there? Reduce them also. Let every Kenyan see that the leaders up there are actually sincere about the economy of the country, and they are ready to sacrifice some of those big allowances that they are getting.
But Sheikh, is in this where the problem really is? Because the suggestions you're making, like cutting down the salaries of MPs and reducing the number of people who are employed, how then would you pass that same bill through the legislators themselves, and you've indicated there that you want to cut their salaries? Because it will be shot down.
Are they there on our behalf or on their own behalves? They are there on the behalf of the Mwananchi. We are paying those salaries to them. So is it blackmail? That if you cut our salaries, then we are not going to do this. They are there to serve the Mwananchi. They should look at what is in the best interest of the country, what is in the best interest of that voter who put them there. Because for me, that sounds like blackmail. How do we expect them to pass the bill? They should, because they swore to serve the people of Kenya. That's why we have put them there. Okay. So that sounds like blackmail, Trevor.
Right. For the Mutie, where would be the priorities for you right now? Where should the government start, considering the level of debt that we have, and they have to do a budget and our international obligations as well?
Well, Trevor, thank you for that question. We've just come out of a period of elections, and during the elections, there were many promises that were done or made to the Mwananchi. I know government wants to deliver those promises and, the kind of things that they say they would do. I would say that let's not do it in haste. Let's take some time and look at ourselves and reimagine ourselves. Are we able to reach, to this level at, currently, or do we give ourselves time to meet these citizens' expectations? I would say we go slow on some of these projects because they would take in the money, and for sure it will take longer time for these investments to give back the monies. Is it the right time to do some of these projects? Let the government think through. Just as my brother Sheikh here said, again, let's look at the way, because when you are saying you want to increase tax, are you also increasing the salaries of these employees? Let's also think through. just as he said, how are we utilizing what we have? Are there areas that needs some kind of downsizing so that, we effectively manage what we have? Because we are in a house, and if you cannot afford everything, you just say, okay, what is that which is of great importance now?
Okay.
Yeah.
Reverend Odede, in terms of the housing, is it a good idea? Because the deficit is right now.
Yeah.
In as much as the timing may be wrong, but the deficit of housing is right now. People need houses even now.
I think affordable housing is always an excellent idea for any nation. The question that we are asking is, what's the right method of going around it? Should it be voluntary, so that if I don't feel I don't need a house, I don't have to be forced to contribute towards it? Should there be a buy-in from others who would actually bring in a wider participation where there is a buy-in, so that there is contributory based on one's desire to get a house? Some of us, like yourself and a few others, may already be having their own houses, and they don't need to contribute. If it's a question of saving, they have other methods of saving, which also may be earning them higher interest. So all those matters needed to have been worked on, so that if you are taking someone's money, there is a buy-in when they know actually that you're going to use that money in the right way, and how they will be able to get that money back. I think the emphasis right now, last year we had a drought in the country where there was famine all over the nation. We have lots of rain right now. We are not doing anything, as far as I know, in terms of tapping into the rains. And we were trying to import food from Zambia, trying to import food from Malawi. How have they succeeded? Not necessarily with large-scale farming, but they have gone down to the little farmer in the village, empowered them, given them seeds, so that everyone is producing their own crop. I think if we had food sufficiency and touched on the economic drivers of electricity and fuel, we will be doing something that will help the economy reduce the cost of living. When we hear Kenya Power is selling power to is buying power at rates that are extremely high, we begin wondering, how did we get into that?
Okay.
Dollars.
And in dollars, how did we get into that?
I have to take a quick break here, then we come back, and I see a lot of your feedback coming through. We'll read some of them, and also a few more proposals that are there in the bill, quite a number of them there. We'll run them by you so that you see and give us your views on them. One of them is previously having 35% for those who earn more than $500,000. We'll talk about that also in just a bit, right? See you shortly.